about a girl, Ari, and her older brother, Gage. After her parents died, after her mother dies of a disease, they have to live with their foster parent, Jana, and Gage and Jana, they don't really get along, so Gage takes Ari, and they kind of become homeless. So we're going to be asking you a few questions, and if you don't feel comfortable answering any of these, then you don't have to. Okay, so
have you ever experienced homelessness?
Personally, I have not, but I've worked with kids who have been homeless. Is that what you're asking, or? Yeah, so I've worked for a number of years as a counselor, and I had, during that time, probably 3 different kids who were homeless that I had to help in that process of getting them somewhere where they could, have a safe home and have some security that way, so.
Okay. What do you think is the main reason for homelessness?
Wow, that's a big question. That's a loaded question. I mean, the kids that I've worked with, it's been, kind of a combination of families that have disintegrated, where, kids, mom and dad have gotten divorced, neither one of them wants a kid, so they're kind of left alone. It's been some of those, medical kind of issues, like in your story where, somebody gets sick and they die and there's not a good place for the kid to go. There's also, I've seen a lot of times where it's been because parents have, have major addiction issues and they're not able to maintain a home and they're not able to keep things going the right direction, and so, they're spending their money on their drugs or their alcohol, and then they can't afford rent, and all of a sudden they're out on the street. So those are some of the things that I've seen happen with that.
We've researched you and what you were working on, and we found out that you were a foster parent. Is that true?
No, that's a lie. Whatever you find on the internet, no.
Okay. So, what is the best and hardest part about being a foster parent?
Answer that one.
Well, the best is that we can give kids hope and a chance, whether they stay with us forever or go back to their parents. Even for 2 weeks or a month or 2 years, we can give them hope, and so maybe that'll help them through the rest of their life. The worst part, I think, is I don't know, some of the choices that the kids make. Even though we've poured our heart into them, they still make really poor choices. It's tough.
I think it's been tough too. We've had some kids who've gone back into home situations that we didn't feel were very safe situations. And so, I mean, we've had kids then who, for whatever reasons, DCFS said they're ready to go back home, but then it just is kind of a shipwreck that happens then after that. I think something else that's fun is we've been doing this long enough that now we get, on Facebook, we'll have former foster kids track us down and say, hey, thanks for the time I was able to be at your house, and, you guys mean a lot to me, and, we maybe haven't heard from them in 4 or 5 years, and so it's just kind of fun to see that as well.
So can you guys explain what you're doing in this picture?
Oh my goodness.
We, groceries, just shopping and putting food away. We had 11 kids living with, we have 11 kids. And so the time that was taken, I think we still had 9 living at home. So that's just regular, normal
Regular grocery
shopping.
shopping.
Okay, thank you. Is there a similar trait that you find in all of your kids?
I think they're all scared. And that can show up in different ways. That can be anger, that can be sadness, that can be, they're all scared. They have a lack of control, and so they're scared.
How does it feel to have 11 children?
Oh, I love it. I always wanted a big family. For the most part, it's fun, and it's kind of fun, the funny looks that we get from people. Because there's not much difference between 11 kids and 10 kids. There's not much difference between 10 kids and 9 kids. So when you add them one at a time, it's really not.
Kind of going into that. I think it's, for us, it's interesting where we have our older biological kids. We have 5 older biological kids that are 18 to 26. And then we have the younger kids that are adopted, and they're dealing with such different issues. You know, our younger kids struggle with the effects of the drug and alcohol abuse that their parents had, and the mental health issues. And so we are, everywhere we go, we're always waiting for a phone call from a school to say, hey, your kid is running away from school, or your kid is, he's climbing on top of the desks, or, you know, those kinds of things. And so that's really different. So we started out, you know, trying to make sure that everything was all the same, but we really kind of ended up with two different families, two different groups of kids. Does that make sense? I mean, we love them all, but they're just so different in their needs and the way that they respond and the way they act and stuff, that it's so vastly different. And just the way that we have to deal with the kids is so vastly different. So.
What do you think is like the best job that you can attain if you're a homeless person?
That's a great question. Are you thinking like a homeless kid or a homeless adult or
Like
anybody
both.
or both? You know, I mean, I think part of the deal is you need to find somebody who's going to work with you and accept you, because I mean, there's a lot of negative feelings towards homeless people. So, you know, is there somebody who's going to work with you and say, hey, I know you have struggles in your life, let me help you get back on your feet? And so, I mean, I think probably initially the best job is to get something, you know, that you can get started back on. A lot of times people who are homeless, you know, will have big gaps in their employment history. And so you got to get somewhere where you can get your feet back in the ground and say, you know, I've had this problem, but I'm getting better and I'm doing this. So I mean, I think that's part of it. But there's also a lot of homeless folks who had a career previously, and because of decisions that they've made, or because of, you know, drug and alcohol issues, you know, yeah, they find themselves on the streets again. And so then to say, well, maybe I can get my foot back in the door in that same field that I have some experience in, and again, gain some dignity back, and keep plugging away. Does that help?
Yeah.
How has your life changed after adopting 6 other kids?
A lot. Okay, next question. Oh,
So
did you catch
if
that?
we
Oh.
hadn't adopted, we would be empty nesters. We would be vacationing 4 or 5 weeks a year. We would, we'd have a clean house. We wouldn't have food thrown on the walls and diapers. It's so different. So we have a grandbaby. She's 6 months old. She lives a mile from our house, and I can't have her come over and play because my little guys are not safe. They're angry. They have autism. She's not safe if she comes over. So as a grandparent, I don't get to be that normal. You know, I don't know if you guys have grandparents who live nearby. If you go over to their house for cookies or whatever the stereotype is for grandmas, I don't get to do that with my grandbaby because I have these little guys. Our life has changed because we don't take our boys out shopping very often. We don't go out to eat very often with them. We don't do the normal things normal families do because the kids are struggling.
And on the positive side, we get a lot of opportunities like this to come and talk to people that we probably wouldn't have had otherwise. And so that's been good too, just that we're able to raise awareness of adopting kids and being foster parents. And so we get to speak to a bunch of ISU classes, we get to speak at some conferences on being foster parents and some of those kind of things. So there's some positive things too. I think for us, you know, I don't know how carefully you guys pay attention to the news, but you know, there's these cases from time to time, you know, even in Bloomington where, you know, some lady's boyfriend gets mad because the baby's screaming and the boyfriend beats the kid to death or, you know, severely. And with the majority of the biological parents of our kids being in prison right now for domestic violence kinds of issues, you know, we have that joy of knowing we've saved kids out of that kind of a situation where likely they would have been those kids who, you know, are, you know, beat to death or beat severely. And so, I mean, I think that's, you know, there's a lot of joy in just saying, man, we've been able to help rescue some kids from here. Our daughter who's 16, we adopted her when we were out in South Dakota. And then we have 2 boys that are from up in Pontiac, and then 3 boys that are from Bloomington Normal. So, you know, to think that we're able to help kids right around us. It's not just those kids somewhere else, but it's our kids, you know, from our communities, our neighborhoods that we're able to help. So, those are some fun things too.
How has your learning experience for like the kids changed since they have troubles or difficulties?
I missed the first part of your question, sorry.
How is learning different for your kids?
How is learning different for our kids?
Some of our kids don't learn. I mean, they really struggle with that. So, I'm confident right now that our first grader's running across the desks in his classroom, and the teacher's trying to grab him, and so he's probably not learning his math. Learning is much slower, and the expectations are much lower. Our first set of kids, we expected excellence from them, and we expected that they did all their homework, and we expected that they got A's, maybe a B, but usually A's in class. And for our second set of kids, we would just love it if they'd come home without a detention, so.
Or so, you know, in our older 5 kids, currently 3 of them are working on master's degrees right now. And we hope that the younger kids will all graduate from high school. The younger kids most of them are on IEPs. Are you guys familiar with IEPs? Individualized education plans. It's for kids who have disabilities, and so it's to help kids out, you know, to work on some of the issues that they have. But, you know, our younger kids they struggle. So we have one who's in we have one who's in a specialized school. We have one who is in a specialized special ed room in the junior high up in Bloomington. And then we have the other 3 all have varying degrees of special ed accommodations to help them through. So it's quite a bit different.
It's really different.
In your blog, I noticed that you volunteer at your church. Can you explain more on that and what you do?
Sure, yeah, in our church that we're at, I work in the nursery once a month, and you know, for me, that's just kind of fun to go hang out with little normal babies, and my granddaughter will be there. That's kind of nice too. So we do that. I play on the worship team at our church sometimes, and we host a small group that meets at our house with other families. So those are some of the things that we do there.
How do you handle both your life and your kids together?
Ask that a little different. Tell me a little more what you're looking for.
It's just yourself, like, going to church and everything, but do you also sometimes bring your kids there, and is it hard to maybe, like, handle them in church?
That's a great question. Church, God is really important to us. I mean, He's the center of everything that we do. And most of our married life, everything is centered around church. And we did everything there, and the kids went with us all the time. Again, the needs of these kids are difficult. So Noah, who's in first grade, is a runner, and he'll run out of class, and then he'll run out of the building. We meet right now we're in a church that meets at Normal West High School, so he'll run through the high school. I'm sure all those teachers love that. So it's more difficult now to take our kids and to go to church. It's a work in progress. You know, we have 2 service dogs, and we take one of the dogs with us, and sometimes we tether Noah. Samuel has some anger issues. Sometimes he runs out of class. Teachers are learning how to deal with them, so it's different. It's different now.
And I think part of it is just trying to teach people the difference. For people who are our age and older, even if you went to school to be a teacher, you didn't get much training in special ed. And so to deal with kids who are extreme, you know, special ed, then that's harder, I think, for adults. And then people in church haven't had all that training either. And so that's been a training process as well to try to help them learn, help us all learn together. You know, I think we're constantly learning how to do things better because we haven't found the right way yet. So, yeah, so that's one of the things that's a